Welcome back to Joyfully at Home. This week we are going to make a favorite around our house. They are essentially a version of a tiny little pie that's kind of a single serve pie. They're a favorite, as I say, a favorite here, and they are blueberry tarts. I used to make these all the time when I was doing farmers markets, and they were a very big hit. So I think you're going to like these. They're just a perfect little size treat. We'll take our dough patty, our pie dough patty now. It's been chilled for at least 2 hours. This pie dough recipe is one from my great-grandmother, and it is in our YouTube channel catalog. We will also go ahead and put a link to it in the description, so you'll have that ready when you want to make these tarts. It'll be all together. And this pie crust recipe is essentially a no-fail pie crust recipe. It's one that's been passed down in our family for generations. And it came from my great-grandmother, and it has actually won several different pie competitions that I've entered. This has also been a very popular pie crust recipe when I was doing farmers markets and doing custom-made pies. Everybody loves this pie crust. I've even had people say that they didn't like pie crust until they tried this recipe because it comes out very flaky, and really there's no going wrong with this pie crust recipe. So we'll make sure that we make it convenient, and we'll put the link in the description so you'll be all set to make that and get your tarts ready. So what we'll do is we get this one dough patty rolled out nice and thin to anywhere between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. We want to make sure that it's nice and thin so it's not all thick. And get this rolled out, and then we'll take the template that I've had made for years. It's actually a 6-inch circle. You can take anything you want. This is just a simple piece of foam board from the dollar store that I put in packing tape to keep it nice so I can wipe it down. So obviously I've been doing this for years. And so it's a 6-inch circle. You can use anything that gives you that 6-inch circle. It can be a bowl. It can be a cookie cutter if you have one big enough. Anything like that to get your 6-inch circles. And you will have re-roll because you're obviously not going to get all of these out of one dough patty. You'll have re-roll, and your pie crust recipe will actually make, if you do a full pie crust recipe, it will make 4 patties of pie dough. Now you're going to take your little 6-inch pie dough circle. Go ahead and just press it into your tart pan. And if your circle gets a little bit out of shape while you're lifting it out of your dough, that's totally fine. It's not going to hurt anything. And there we are. We've got our first one in its pan. And it'll look just like that. And here we're using 3 to 4 inch tart pans. And once you get that pressed in there, you're going to be ready for your filling. And we'll show you that part next. But first, we're going to go ahead and continue getting the rest of our pie dough circles in our tart pans. Now that we have all of our pie dough circles into our little tart pans, and just make sure that they're nice up against the edges. You don't have too many bubbles or anything like that down at the bottom. They're pressed firmly in. You don't want to squash them. You don't need to, but just to make sure that they're sitting down in there nicely. We're going to go ahead and mix up our blueberry filling. For this, I have about 2 cups of blueberries here. I'm going to take about 1/4 cup of sugar, about 3 tablespoons to 1/4 cup. I have between 1/4 and 1/3 cup of flour. That just makes it so they're not so juicy. And it depends on your blueberries. You can adjust your flour according to the needs of your blueberries. These ones are our fresh blueberries that we have here. And these ones actually came off of my very own bushes. So they were frozen and in the freezer. And you can use frozen blueberries or you can use fresh. Either way is fine. And then we have a teaspoon of Saigon cinnamon. And that is a slightly different cinnamon. This one here, I actually got from Costco. You can get it at Costco and you can get it at Amazon as well. It's a slightly different kind of cinnamon than your typical ground cinnamon. It has a lot more intensity in the flavor, and it's just exceptional cinnamon. You're going to get a lot more of a richer taste to your cinnamon, a lot more intense. And it's just amazing cinnamon. You're going to really taste the difference in it. And the blueberries, if you are using frozen, you can use them straight from frozen, or you can go ahead and thaw them so they're all thawed a little bit. Either is fine. If you use from frozen, you'll just add a couple minutes to your bake time is all you have to do. So you just take a spoonful and you start putting your blueberries into your little tart shells. You'll have a little bit of extra flour in there that, like I say, that makes sure that they're not too juicy. And you're going to go ahead and fill your tart pans so they're about half to 2/3 full, because we have a crumb topping that's also going to go on these. You just keep filling your little tart shells. They're about 2/3 full. You don't want them skimpy because your blueberries will cook down, but you don't want them overflowing so you don't have room for your topping either. So, and now to finish getting our tarts ready for the oven, now that we have our little tart shells all filled, we're going to go ahead and make a crumb topping for these, which makes them absolutely delicious. We start with a 1/2 cup of flour, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, equal parts. If you're not making as many tarts, you don't have to have as much, but you always use your equal parts of brown sugar and flour, and use a pastry blender, or you can even use a heavy-duty fork. A lot of people will even use food processor to make their crumb topping, which I do sometimes. If I'm making a lot of crumb topping for something, I'll use my food processor, but in this case, we're just making a small amount, so I'll just use pastry blender just to chop it all up together. Now that we have our flour and our brown sugar basically together, we're going to take a 1/4 cup of butter. And what I've done is just, it's going to be cold butter. You always want to make sure in your crumb topping you put in cold butter. Just cut into little squares. The little squares certainly aren't anything that has to be perfect. It just makes it so it blends into your crumb topping quicker and easier. So we'll go ahead and put in that 1/4 cup, and that's a 1/2 stick of butter. And then you just start blending it into your crumb until you get a crumb topping that has a coarse, crummy texture. So we'll continue to go ahead and get our cold butter pieces incorporated into our crumb topping. And then once we have that all crummy and all into a set of coarse crumbs, we'll be able to top our little tarts with it. Now that you see we have our crumb mixture all incorporated into little tiny coarse pieces here, you'll always get some bigger pieces of the butter, and that's perfectly fine. As long as it looks like this and you don't have really big chunks of butter in there, you're going to be just fine. And this mixture here with just the butter, flour, and sugar is a perfect basic mix. If you like, you can also sprinkle a little extra cinnamon in this as well. There's nothing wrong with that, depending on what you're doing and what you're using it for. If you like a little extra cinnamon, you can go ahead and sprinkle a little extra in there. So we're just going to take now our spoon, and we're going to cover our blueberries with our topping, and then they'll be all ready for the oven and be the perfect little handheld treat. Now that you have your little tarts, all with their blueberries and their crumb topping on top of them, they're all ready for the oven. We're going to go ahead now and put these in a 425-degree preheated oven, and they'll go in for anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. And you'll look to your topping will get nice and golden brown. Your crust will have a nice light brownness to the crust, and you'll know that they're ready. You'll also see some of those blueberry juices kind of bubbling up along the edges, and that's when you know they're perfectly ready. So we're going to go ahead and put these in for 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll show you what they look like when they come out. And now after 20 minutes, your little pies, your tarts, they come out of the oven, and you can see where your juices are bubbling up nicely around the edges. And your crust has a nice golden color along with your topping. And these, once they cool, you can literally lift them right out of the pan, as you can see. And you can have them as a perfect little handheld single-serve treat. And they're the perfect little snack. You can have them for parties. anything you want to do. If you just want a little bit of a treat here and there, but you don't want to make a whole pie, you can make these.